All right, welcome to the redraft of 2008. Yes, the panel is back. It is cold right now when we're recording this in Edmonton, Alberta area for most of us. It is closing in on minus 30 degrees Celsius. Yes, it's a cold one out today, but hey, that's what hockey weather's all about. So let me bring the panel back in today. We've got Eric in, a big-time Leaf fan. We have Frank, a Montreal Canadiens fan. And of course, we've got Ryan, who is your local Edmonton Oiler fan. So welcome, guys, back to our second redraft podcast. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Doing all right.
Doing well. Thanks.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a little bit nippy out there. And I think, Frank, out in Montreal, you guys are supposed to get some freezing rain and some nasty weather coming your way, or did that hit already today?
No, it's snow, no freezing rain. That was this weekend. So, 15 centimeters of snow, maybe. Ooh. They don't know what direction the storm's going, so we'll see.
Wow. All right. Well, today, guys, we are going to go through and do the redraft of 2008. So if you missed the last episode, last week we did a 2003 redraft, and that was like Christmas. We had a fun time picking 16 players, and it was easy to do. This one's going to be a little bit more difficult. So let's go around the table a little bit here and just kind of your general thoughts about the 2008 draft, because this is the 15th year anniversary. 15 years ago, this draft took place. And I remember it like it was 3 years ago. It doesn't seem like that far away. So, Eric, let's start with you. What is your kind of general memories of the 2008 draft?
Well, certainly Stamkos stands out. He was highly touted.
Froze again.
In Tampa. And then, of course, everything all came together. Generally, it's funny, though, when you compare it to the one that we did last week, the 2003. This is, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. This is like the distant cousin that's unattractive. Let's go with that. That's politically correct, I think.
Oh, we're getting controversial right away. Yes, with this draft here. All right, Frank, what about you? The 2008 draft, what are some of your memories about it?
Yeah, so you guys, man, all about offense, man. This was a D-heavy draft, and D's don't get the sexy 100-point seasons. And it was a very good draft. 5 of the top 10 players with the most game plays are defensemen. So this was just a D-heavy draft. On the forward side, not a lot to chew on, but there were a couple of starting goalies, and there were multiple first-pair Ds, and that was the strength of this draft. So you have to keep things in perspective. So it was not a weak draft. We've seen weak drafts, like we've talked about it before. The Yakupov draft was weak all around. This was not a weak draft. We'll see the defensemen come off the board, and some of them were franchise defensemen. So,
all right. And Ryan, you were, kind of just getting into hockey. Of course, the 2006 Edmonton Oilers run had just kind of happened a couple years before it. So you were kind of starting to get big time into the game. What do you remember about 2008 draft?
I remember having to go to school instead of getting to stay home and watch it. But no, it was a draft before. No, we still had hope at this time of being able to make the playoffs again. I remember that. What I remember from the draft itself, not a damn thing, because I never watched it, never really kept up with any of the players who were drafted, but it was kind of nice going back in time, doing the homework here to kind of see where all these players kind of came from. But first-hand experience of the draft, not a damn thing.
Yeah, it's always fun, going back, 15 years later and looking at the mistakes and at the home runs that were hit by some of the teams. And, when I was doing my homework too, it was like, wow, that player went that late or that player went that early. Sometimes we forget because at the time, this draft was in over 2 different days, which it still is now. Round 1 was always on the Friday night, and then Saturday was rounds 2 through 7. And so you'd get that premier first round, and then not many people kind of tuned in the second day. It was the spectacle was always that first day. But yeah, we're going to have some fun going through seeing who we would take 15 years later. All right, guys, let's get right into the draft here. So we had our draft order, and offline, we kind of started to make some picks just so we're prepared for tonight's show. And the last round, we kind of left as a little bit of a mystery to all of us. So we don't know who we're all going to take in the last round here. We're only going to draft the top 16. And you see on the screen here, the real first 16 picks of the 2008 draft. So with the number 1 pick, Tampa Bay selected Steven Stamkos. And in our redraft, the first pick goes to Eric. Eric, who would you take today if the draft was held?
Well, I think it's I'll make this short and sweet. It's got to be Stamkos again. He's exceeded. I don't know if he's exceeded. He was highly touted, but at the same time, he is the type of player I think every team would want. And not only that, but the fact that, I look at the horrific injuries that he has suffered through his career. I don't think, but certainly broken legs and things along those lines. He comes back, and I know that's based upon his training. I know that he's kind of a health nut when it comes to, as I'm sure probably all 90% of NHL players are. But he's given Tampa. He's exceeded. I would say he's exceeded their expectations. He's really turned out to be great. I'm glad that he's in blue and white. It's just not the right blue and white. It's beautiful. So he's a beauty. What can I tell you? That's it.
I don't think anyone on the panel would disagree with that. Frank, got some opinions about that first pick?
I was just going to say Toronto tried to bring him in the blue and white, but taxes, baby. So, but yeah, even with his injuries, it's crazy. He's still 3rd on the list in games played. So he's a quick healer. It's he's approaching 1,000 games he didn't break his thumb. There was, like Eric said, like severe injuries. So hats off, kudos. 500 goals, 500 assists, 1,000 points. Hall of Famer, first ballot, no brainer.
Yes, from the Sarnia Sting, Steve Stamkos is selected by Eric. All right, the second overall pick goes to Ryan. And again, in the real NHL draft, that's where Los Angeles chose Drew Doughty. So Drew Doughty went 2nd overall. Ryan, who are you taking at number 2 now?
I'm picking Drew Doughty again. Just that cornerstone defenseman that you want to build a franchise around. Solid every year he's played. Won the Norris Trophy just once, which is kind of surprising. Led the team to a couple cups, the LA Kings. One of those true number 1 defensemen that all the teams want. There's probably only 10 or 12 in the NHL right now. And even at the age right now, you could still consider him a bona fide number 1 defenseman, and has sped up the LA Kings little rebuild that they've done there. Having a guy like that on your team, he's not going to He's not going to let you lose for long.
Yeah, and again, kind of a no-brainer at number 2. We've seen something in common between pick number 1 and number 2, both of them holding up a Stanley Cup. All right, so definitely wise choices by the Kings and by the Tampa Bay Lightning. And with Drew Doughty, you always get that little bit of rebelness, with him. This quote here.
He walks that fine line.
He did walk that fine line, and where is your Stanley Cup ring? When he was asked, well, it's either in my attic or my parents' attic. I don't know where it is. So he's not one to, wear it out in public all the time and show it off. He just kind of, takes things as they come. So Drew Doughty. Any comments, Eric, about the Kings and Doughty? Oh, I think Eric has frozen up again. Yeah. All right. Well, he may have to leave and come back on. We'll wait to see if Eric gets back on stream here. All right. With the number 3 pick, the number 3 pick in the NHL draft was held by the Atlanta Thrashers. Of course, now the Winnipeg Jets, and the Atlanta Thrashers chose the second defenseman of the draft, Zach Bogosian. And of course, a player that, looking back now, I think Atlanta would do things a little bit differently. I mean, Zach Bogosian still playing, is probably a number 5, 6, 7 kind of defenseman right now, but definitely wouldn't go number 3 overall. So I have the 3rd pick, and with the 3rd pick, I would be selecting Roman Josi. Roman Josi, although he hasn't won a cup, he's led the National Predators to the playoffs many times, and he's been that rock. He's been the captain. He's been that stud on defense. Reminds me of that Chris Pronger type with a little less offense that the Oilers had in their 2006 Cup run. So great defenseman, great leadership. Of course, he comes over from Switzerland, born in Bern, Switzerland, and has played with Nashville ever since 2011. And he was drafted 38th overall. So he went in the 2nd round. He was a steal by Nashville. And of course, no one is going to pass on him in the top 5 if they were to do a redraft. What do you think? What do you think, Ryan, about Roman Josi?
Yeah, he's I almost picked him to go 2nd, to be honest, but I think the proven victories of Drew Doughty kind of edged him out there. But the last couple of years too, he's still putting up those points. He's still in the top echelon of defensemen that are playing, and especially from that draft. Can't go wrong with that guy either.
Yeah. And Frank, how about you with Josi versus Doughty? Because it's apples and oranges. One's more offensive, one's more defensive. Who would you be taking between those two?
Doughty number 2 because of the leadership. And who's more offensive? Josi, yes. Last year he blew it out of the water, but early in his career, he was not the dominant defenseman he became. It took him a while. He arrived in the NHL later than everybody else. So, but Doughty is a leader. You can see it with the great battles with Tkachuk in the playoffs. He doesn't back down. So, and with your quote, it's all about winning. And it's not about winning yesterday. It's about winning today and tomorrow. So Doughty for his leadership skills, for sure, he would go number 2.
Yeah, he's a guy too. I hope somewhere along his career he does hoist the Stanley Cup, because he's contributed to the game in many subtle ways, and playing in Nashville maybe doesn't get the recognition he would get if he was in one of the bigger market cities. But great player. So Roman Josi goes at number 3.
You have to remember he was also second fiddle because he played with Suter, played with Weber, it's only recently he became a bona fide number one. So that's why his recognition was not there, because at one point he was the number 3 defenseman on Nashville because of the quality of Ryan Suter, which was in the last episode, and Shea Weber, which also was from the 2003 draft. So he finally flew of his own wings very late in his career.
Yeah, very good point. And probably helped him as well, because he had the opportunity to be mentored by some of these other guys and, not have to take minutes that he wasn't capable of at that young age. So yeah, good point having Suter and Weber there. All right, we go to pick number 4. And in 2008, St. Louis, the Blues had the 4th pick, and they took Alex Pietrangelo. And I don't think we could fault the Blues for that. I think that was a home run for them. However, redrafting, and Frank, you're up. Who would you draft instead of Mr. Pietrangelo?
The guy with the second most point in this draft so far, defenseman. He would have gone before Yossi for me, Erik Karlsson, if he didn't suffer his terrible injuries that he didn't just miss time, but he was ineffective for a couple of years after his injuries, 3 years total, because he missed almost a year. So he has 736 points. He's almost 100 points ahead of Eberle, a forward. And everybody talked about the new generation of defensemen while he was wobbled and behind Burns sharing PowerPoint points. So this new generation of defensemen that came, it's a new wave. Makar, Fox, all these kids use. And it's like this year he's saying, wait a minute, I'm still around. And he is just dominating this year. He's 15 points up from the second-ranked defenseman, which is Dahlin. That's crazy in 60-some-odd games for a defenseman. So he's only 32. Who knows if he gets traded, but he's just saying, hold on, I'm the OG offensive defenseman, because he had years in Ottawa where he dominated like few have done in the past, taking the puck and going all the way to the net. It's like he changed the game with his skating, and that's why his tendon was very hurtful. Like some basketball players, they went from being a starting 5, having that injury, and coming off the bench as the 7th and 8th guy off the bench, because it's devastating injury. So it looks like he's back to he's not back to 100%. He never will be, but he's got the power play to himself now. Burns moved on. And while nobody, if anybody says they saw this coming from Erik Karlsson, they're a liar, because nobody had that in their books. He came out of nowhere this year. And Yossi almost got 100 points last year. Would have been the first since, I think, Brian Leach 20-some-odd years ago, or whoever had 100 points. Or Erik Karlsson says, hold my beer. I'm going to do this because I'm the offensive defenseman of this generation. And he's 26 points off. So unless he's injured, he's going to be the first one since.
Yeah, what a great comeback story, and maybe a Masterson candidate as well, and obviously a Norris candidate. First guy I would think of for the Norris Trophy right now is Erik Karlsson. Again, maybe not the best defensively, but his offensive output is far and above. Like you said, Dahlin.
You guys know about offensive defensemen. Everybody always criticized Paul Coffey's defense. But when you always have the puck on your stick, you don't need to be a good defenseman defensively, because the other team doesn't have the puck. So it's the same situation here. If you don't have the puck, you can't score. And Paul Coffey is a perfect example of that. This guy was so dominant, but everyone said, he wasn't good defensively. Well, he always had the puck. If we had stats like we have today, and you saw how much time the puck was on his stick per game, it would have been flabbergasting.
Yeah. And looking at these players when they were drafted, Eric and Frank and maybe even Ryan now, like, don't you feel old when you see Eric Carlson? He looks like he's 12 years old.
Yeah, no, he doesn't even look like Eric Carlson in this picture, right? I was like, well, I don't know why you're putting that picture up. So yeah, like he looks totally different. Yeah, I know. He's a swashbuckling defenseman now. So
and remember, Ottawa reached for him. That was a big thing with TSN's commentator. What a reach! Because I think they traded up or whatever. They did something, and it was what? That kind of pick is this? What a reach! A little skinny runt from Sweden. He doesn't have the size. He can't play in the NHL. Blah blah blah. And it's like hindsight 2020.
Yeah, it definitely was a great pick. All right, let's move on to pick number 5. We're into our round 2. And Eric, this was your Toronto Maple Leafs. Your Toronto Maple Leafs had the number 5 pick that year, and they went with another big, tough, defensive defenseman in Luke Schenn. So redrafting, Eric, who would you take this time?
Well, I mean, hey, Luke Schenn is still playing, so that's something for the Leafs compared to last time we were talking. So in that 2003 draft, but I would pick John Carlson from the Washington Capitals. I like a horse on the backside, and he is that. When you look at his ice time, when you look at his games, he's not an offensive juggernaut by any stretch of the imagination, and that's not the case. But at the same time, his time on ice is, when I'm looking, I see 26 minutes, 25, 26. Even this year, 22, 23, and that means he's an older dude at this stage. He's ranking in at time on ice about 25 minutes. So now he's only played 30 games, but at the same time, he's that steady Stanley Cup champion defenseman, and I think he was a big part of that run for them. And he's a beauty. So if you could redraft, I think the Leafs would have been better off choosing him. Probably they would have screwed it up and traded him to Boston, and Boston would have beat them with him or something, like as they at least have done in the past so many times. But yeah, that would be my pick. I like the way he plays.
I need to make a comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Frank.
Eric, I need to call you out on him not being an offensive juggernaut. He's got 3 seasons over 70 points, and another one at 68. And it's like, what are your criteria, man? You're tough, man. You're tough.
Well, I like goal scorers, man. No, I'm kidding. But I think that's what I was looking at. You're right. He certainly, and he does get it. I know that he was on the power play and things along those lines. Don't follow a lot of Washington. It's funny how I'm learning about Eastern-Western bias a little bit. And we'll talk about that. I hope we get a chance to talk about it coming up in the sense, and I don't know if it's even bias or what we're exposed to, right? Because although I'm aware of Carlson and like him very much and so on, when I still had to do a little bit of research on him to kind of find what I was looking for. But yes, you're right. From the assist perspective, he's very high up. And if you're getting 75 points, but I was looking at goals. I was like, okay, what kind of goal scorer is he? He's a defenseman, but I love those offensive defensemen. So there you go.
But by the way, he is underrated because when you think about the offensive defenseman of the past 15 years, everybody's going to pass him over because Ovechkin gets all the pizzazz with Backstrom, etc. So he's like probably the best 70-point defenseman nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So you got to pass on that because you don't think about him as being dominant. He doesn't have the speed. You know, he's not elite in much. He's just excellent in everything, you know, and he doesn't get the flash. He doesn't get the news. He doesn't, you know, it's like people say, okay, John Carlson. Yeah, I heard he was good, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was teasing you because
No,
it's the bias of.
Well, it's true. Like when I look at his assist totals and his point totals, they're quite high, right? But at the same time, like I said, yeah, he's one of those things that we hear about, and I think you summed it up really well. We hear about him, we know he's good, and you know we could certainly place him as a Washington defenseman. But other than that, it's like, okay, let's move on, right? It's not the Erik Karlsson who got the attention. And maybe that's because I'm in Canada. Erik Karlsson was certainly in the East a long time. But yeah, no, we just don't hear of it as much. But when I was going through the stats and going, okay, who would I choose? Who's a better choice here? Yeah, that stood out. So there we go.
Yeah,
And,
I mean, a great
just to
pick.
put
And
things in perspective, you know, John Carlson has played 150 games less than Drew Doughty. That's almost 2 seasons worth, and he's 10 points ahead of Doughty. That's crazy. So
Which would have surprised
like,
me. Yeah, that's surprising, right? Because Drew Doughty is known as, like, again, but we see a lot of Doughty, and I think it's because, of course, we watch a lot of Oilers stuff, and you're going to get the Doughty, and Doughty was highly, like, I would, if you said, okay, you can have Doughty or, you know, Carlson, and you gave me that stat, I would have lost money on that stat because I would think Doughty would be, and I know Doughty's had a lot of injuries, but I would have thought that he would be higher considerably.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And unfortunately, Carlson's kind of hitting a lot of injuries now. And again, another Stanley Cup champion. And I remember Carlson, I believe it was Team Canada, Team USA in the World Juniors, Carlson on the USA, Peter Angelo on Team Canada. And I think the finals or the semifinals went to overtime. And didn't John Carlson score the winning goal for the United States that year? I think he might have. I think there was a Carlson versus Peter Angelo World Junior final between them. So maybe we'll check on that and report back next week. But definitely a good pick. He is going to go top 10 in 99% of all redrafts and a champion. All right, let's go on back to Ryan. And with the number, I guess we're number 6 pick now. In 2008, it belonged to the Columbus Blue Jackets. And now we're seeing a lot of big changes in terms of how the draft would be different today. Because back in 2008, Nikita Filatov, a highly touted flash and dash winger, was taken by the Columbus Blue Jackets. And again, he showed something his first couple years in the NHL and then just disappeared. So Ryan, instead of Filatov, unless you're going to redraft him, who would you take number 6?
We're going to try to do this all with a straight face. I think I'm already going to lose. I'm going to draft Jordan Eberle.
What?
A little bit of fan service. A little bit.
Are you serious? Number 6 overall? Jordan Eberle?
Homer.
What, did he pay you? Did he contact you and pay you and say, hey, buddy, make sure I go top 10?
I did. Yeah. I did have the luxury of meeting him in person at a couple times at the EB games. He signed a bunch of stuff for me both times. So, I mean, that was fun. But he definitely came into the NHL with a bit of a bang. I don't know. I remember the goal to this day. Deking out Calgary Flames and putting it top shelf backhand as he's diving into the boards. Lit it up in the World Juniors. Mr. Canada 2.0 type of guy. Had some pretty good offensive years. Edmonton ended up trading him away, and funny enough, as they traded him away, that's the type of player they wanted back. So a lot of scratching heads there as to why they traded him away. Spent some time in New York, got some real playoff experience and finally did something in the playoffs.
Sorry.
That's Jordan
That's actually-
Eberle on line one, Eric.
Yeah, no, it's actually my son calling. It's my little ringtone for him. So anyway,
Oh.
sorry. Move on.
And now he's at Seattle at a new franchise. I doubt he'll ever win a cup in his career, but I mean, I don't know. You don't always get lucky.
And I have to admit, Ryan, I do have this picture autographed by Jordan Eberle. I'm a huge Eberle fan as well. When he played and scored that winning goal with a few seconds left in the game against Russia, boy, that was a top 10 Canadian hockey moment, in my opinion. Great player, did well with the Oilers for what they had. And his flaw wasn't that playoff performer. That's what he got kind of nailed for.
It took him 7 years of playing with the Oilers before he got into the playoffs, and then he just didn't know what to do with himself. He has elite hands, but he never had really the speed and the skates to keep up with the play. But he was, good to receive a pass and do something great with it.
And Eric, what do you think about? Give us your opinions about Eberle and him going this high in the draft.
You know what? He was such a great junior, right? And I remember being very excited when the Oilers got him because he was a good Saskatchewan kid, and that we Oiler people, Edmonton's a blue collar town, so we tend to like that quite a bit. So you know what? I think you can't help but have a soft spot for Eberle. This high, though, I look at what's happened to his career. It seems this is a little bit like I might be, as Frank might say, a little bit of a homer pick here. And I understand it because I guess I am a bit of a homer, after the Leafs. Certainly it's the Oilers, but yeah, he wasn't New York Islanders didn't find him so valuable that they didn't let him go in the expansion draft, right? That's why he's in Seattle. And so I think that says something as well. So,
but he's not doing bad there. He found a home in Seattle. He's not doing bad there.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, hey, he's higher than the Oilers are right now in point. So he's on a guaranteed playoff team. But you know what? He doesn't scare me. Like if Eberle's coming in, it's like, yeah, I don't care. Sometimes he'll score. Sometimes he's not dangerous. I just don't think I think he's a good second rounder, to be honest with you. He's not my, yeah. So good on Eberle. Nice kid. Go Riders, Saskatchewan boy. But yeah, sorry. No, I don't see it.
Yeah, it just shows you the difference between the last redraft we did to this. This is pick what? 5? 6? Sixth.
Yeah.
We're in a career 55-point, 60-point guy, whereas last time we had Hall of Famers in our fourth round, and now we're like, okay, we're down to this, and he's actually, that's why I'm saying this is a D heavy draft. He's like the second best scoring forward of the 2008 draft. So, but I agree with Eric. It's too high because there's difference maker at defenseman, which we'll see picked very, very shortly. That would have been the difference maker. Eberle had the one great year. Second year, I think he had 76 points in 78 games, but he's a middle to line 2 or 3 for most of his career. So when you have a number 1D still available for redraft, that's where I would have gone. But he is still the second best forward available. It's not very, very big quality there.
Yeah, I thought he would, have a much better career. Like you said, Frank, 76 points is his career high, which really good. Almost a point a game player in his second year in the league. Had that great first goal, like Ryan said, against the Calgary Flames. But after that, a couple 60 points in the 60 points, and then it's, 40s, 50s, 30s. So
Well,
I
look
guess
at the games played, though. Look at the games played.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, 63 points in 81 games, 51 points in 82 games, 37 points in 78 games. So, yeah, he did miss some time, but he's still not close to that point a game player that he was in his second year. But again, as Frank said, this is kind of the best of a kind of a poor draft once we get past, 10 players. All right, let's move on to the next pick. And the next pick in 2008 belonged to Nashville. And although Nashville would get Roman Josi, but a little bit later, they chose Colin Wilson with the number 7 pick overall. And a guy that's been in the league a while. He's shifted around different teams. Great kind of third, fourth line kind of player, but wasn't that top 6 player that I think Nashville was hoping for. So I would not take Colin Wilson. Instead, with the number 7 pick, I now will take Alex Pietrangelo, a player that deserves to be in at least the top 7, top 8. I think ahead of Eberle, a player that captain material and did win again a cup with the St. Louis Blues. So there's that common denominator of these defensemen. They're helping their teams win cups. So Pietrangelo, great member of Team Canada when he had the opportunity to play, and now moving on to Vegas, is helping Vegas, winding down his career, but definitely should go number 7. So any opinions on that, Frank, from an Eastern perspective? Because you probably saw him more playing with the Blues.
Well, the Blues are out. They're not out east. They're out west.
Well, no,
right?
yeah, but maybe press-wise, anything in the press, because
No, I just want to make the comment that because he's dominant, not like offensively, but physically, etc. But he still got downgraded from his original draft position from 4th to 7th.
third. Didn't he go third? Or fourth. Yeah,
fourth to St. Louis. So, and he's got over 500 points, 900 games played, but he's big and he's mean, So, no other comment that he had to go. If you didn't pick him, I was going to pick him for sure with the next pick. So, he's a number 1 defenseman, So.
And both Eberle and Pietrangelo have about the same games played. They're in the early 900s. Pietrangelo 106 plus 106. Eberle minus 70. Just saying, Ryan. Just saying that maybe you might want to reconsider. And
still the second best forward in this draft.
All right. Well, now that we've finally taken Mr. Pietrangelo, we have the 8th pick, which again belongs to Frank. In 2008, the Phoenix Coyotes selected Mikhail Bodker with the number 8 overall pick. I remember him, prior to the draft, he was a great player. I think he was playing for Team USA, maybe in looks like he played for the OHL Rangers. But he was, again, touted as a superstar or potential superstar. What do you think, Frank? Are you going to take Mikhail Bodker in the redraft?
All speed, not much else. So, no. And I'm going to go with the best player available on the board. Yeah, that must be it. I'm not even going to check. Holtby. He went early second round originally, but this guy had a stretch where he was so dominant. Just to refresh everybody's memory, 3 years running, his goals against average was 222, 220, 2.07. You say, oh yeah, but no. when you play a lot of games, usually you become less effective. Well, his 222 was 73 games played. Took 9 games off that year. Save percentage over those 3 years, 923, 922, 925. Won the cup, obviously. So with the Capitals, so you have to take him. After those 3 years, things went sideways. But if you're picking in the first round and you get told you're going to have a number one goalie and a number one goalie who will change the games he's playing, he can win games on his own when everybody else is off. Any GM in the NHL would say, give him to me, please. So much better than Chet Picard pick, who went in the first round in the 2008 draft.
But the question, Frank, is would you take him ahead of Jordan Eberle?
Oh, Jesus.
Easily.
And I have to say, Frank, Braden Holtby is in the studio, and he was so excited by you drafting him number 8 overall. He can't contain his excitement. And what's he have in common with all the other players, or many of the other players that we've seen? Stanley Cup champion. So another Stanley Cup champion. I think maybe wasn't just Eberle and the only guy with. Oh, okay. Let's move on.
Hey, he won a couple. He won a couple Canadian trophies. Let's not forget that one.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, with Regina Pats, maybe, or in
he won in WHL too.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to pick number 9, I think Holtby is arguably the best goaltender in the draft. Although there is another fairly good one coming up soon. Number 9 belonged to the New York Islanders. And back in 2008, the New York Islanders used that pick on one Josh Bailey. And again, just looking at these players now, how young they look, like they should be in high school, grade 10. So Josh Bailey was the pick back then. The pick this time, Eric, you're up.
Yeah, it is me. And I didn't realize that. I don't know why Josh Bailey didn't do it for me. I knew that I wasn't going to go there. But I am looking at his stuff now, and I see he's played a lot with the Islanders. Lots of games under his belt. Not really very offensive at all. Carlson blows him out of the water. And I don't consider Carlson that great. So anyway, so I went with Adam Henrique. That would be number 82, 3rd round. And I just, when I was looking at, certainly it's a name that stands out. And probably because of his Anaheim years, I don't remember much when he played for New Jersey. However, he when I look at some of his goals, the goals, he got 30 goals 1 year with the Devils, 20. He's fairly consistent, although he's fallen down. He had 2021 was a bad season for him. He only played 45 games, got 12 goals, but he's a 20 goal scorer in many cases. To me, is what stood out. And sometimes higher. So the 30 was certainly his highest, and just a guy who is fairly consistent. He's got, his injuries. He's not, he's had some injury problems because when I look, I see that his numbers aren't, sometimes he's had half seasons and things along those lines. And there's a few full seasons, but not super many. But wow, he sure was far down and a bit of a gem. So to me, when I looked at everything that was there, he's kind of what stood out, and that's why I went with him.
Okay. Frank, again, with Henrique playing a lot in New Jersey, over half of his career so far, probably made his way to Montreal. You've probably seen it in person play quite a bit. What are your thoughts about Henrique?
the 2008 draft. What can we say, man? It's like, would he have been my pick here? No. Can you argue? It's like our last draft. We're arguing Hall of Famers, but here we're arguing 40, 50-point players that had no impact. So it's like you can make the case for somebody else, but to me, if you still have a number one goalie available on the board, it's unforgivable to not pick him. But I was last in this go around, and I guess you're all afraid to betray your Oiler roots and pick a current Calgary player, but that does to me it's unforgivable.
Hey, that's that number one goalie. He's going to have his team missing the playoffs this year.
Yeah,
so
he's not so number
let's not
one.
get too high on him.
No.
Yeah, and what's Henrique doing with his team? Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
He's got 19 goals this season. 19 goals. That's just about a 20 goal scorer there right there. Oh, my God. He's on fire.
Fighting for Bedard. Yeah, okay. So, anyways.
Well,
so,
all right. Well,
look.
Well, now we have a chance to redeem because Ryan's up next. And, Ryan's an astute hockey fan, and I'm sure Ryan would not make the same mistake twice in the redraft. So with the number 10 pick in 2008, the Vancouver Canucks took Cody Hodgson.
I see that head shaking.
And I remember, again, watching the draft, and I was kind of hoping Hodgson would fall to Edmonton because, again, he had a good junior career. He played for Team Canada. He had grit. He hit guys. I thought he was going to be
he had the
really
pedigree.
good.
I remember him. He had the pedigree of being, the next great two-way player that would shut down and contribute offensively. So you can't really fault this pick because he got traded to Buffalo, I think, right? For Tyler Myers.
Yeah.
So he still got Tyler Myers because he still had that pedigree even after not doing much. So that's what I remember of Cody Hodgson. And I was hoping he would fall also, not for the Habs, but, it's like everybody was hoping he would fall. He had that pedigree.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think he was a player that at the time everyone said, good pick, Vancouver, good pick. So, Ryan, we wouldn't fault you if you took Cody Hodgson now because – he did have that potential. So with the number 10th pick overall, Ryan, who are you going to take?
How about two-time Cup winner Justin Schultz? No, he drafted by Anaheim. Didn't want to play in Anaheim. Who can blame him? There was a big race to sign him once his race to Anaheim were up. Edmonton got lucky. I guess he saw a bright future in Edmonton. That did not pan out. He joined us when we're in the deepest of our decade of darkness. And he definitely never helped the case. I'm pretty sure the fans helped him pack his bags on the way out of town. We gave him mercy. Sent him to Pittsburgh. Won a couple cups in a row. Found his game to an extent. A player that old would be hard to reclaim all the way, I would think. But was steady for a few years, and now he's settled in Seattle. Seems to be a trend here, and he's playing fine. I wouldn't complain about how he's playing right now. I'd take him on my team right now. And, look at that. Stanley Cup winner.
Kind of looks like Drew Doughty a little bit there.
Yeah.
So we've got Justin Schultz
Ryan,
going. Frank's got something to say, Ryan.
I just want to ask Ryan, you take him on your team right now. So you're the Chicago Blackhawks, right? Right now?
Yeah. Seattle's fighting for the top in the Western Conference, and he's putting up points. He's not a point per game guy, but he's not slouching it. 49 games played, 26 points, plus 28.
Eric, you're the tiebreaker.
Plus seven.
What do you think, Eric?
Comment.
I saw your reaction when he took Justin Schultz. So I think you're kind of leaning towards Frank.
Yeah, God help me. Yeah, I think that is the case. Just because of the fact, you know what? I remember when the Oilers got Schultz, right? Because he was a free agent for some reason. There was something you'll have to remind.
He refused to sign in Anaheim, and he eventually his rights were up, so he became a free agent.
Okay, and it was highly touted. Like at the time, Hall went out to visit him and try and convince him, I think, to come to Edmonton, and so on and so forth. And it was big news, right? Because Edmonton was dark, a decade of darkness. It seemed longer. We thank God for the 80s, because the Oilers would have nothing else to really grab onto. And it was a big deal. But, and I thought, okay, great. But he was pretty much run out of town. People were tired of him. They weren't happy with what he produced. He wasn't the offensive juggernaut they were hoping for.
I want to say it was no fault of his own. It was the Oilers development program at that time.
Well, whatever it was, he was booed, I think, even at Edmonton. So yeah, I think this is a bit high. I think he's a pretty steady defenseman. He's shown that he's found his niche, and he's done okay. Right? He's still going, and that's good. He sure doesn't look like the little kid picture. That's pretty funny. He looks like he's 12 in that picture that you showed. But they all do. Maybe that's showing my age. But yeah, that one. But you know what? Yeah, he wouldn't be in my top 16. It just wouldn't happen. But that's okay.
Can I just ask something to Ryan, because he says
No.
at that time. So the Oilers have a good development system right now?
Oh, 100% they do.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
Can't deny that.
Frank, have you heard of Paul Yarvi? Yeah, he's fantastic.
Oh yeah, no, let's not get started with that guy. But he's a miss.
Who have they developed? They got
Tyler Benson. How about Tyler Benson? How about Olivier Rodrigue?
We've developed a starter goalie for starts.
Yeah,
Moreau's.
We've developed a starter goalie. We have defensemen coming down the pipeline like crazy. Big towers coming down the pipeline that are going to be difference makers in this NHL.
How do you know?
We have forwards that are in our farm system that teams are asking for. So we're doing quite fine with development right now. It's a little late because Connor McDavid is going to be gone from his prime by the time the defensemen are ready. But we have plenty of great players coming. Don't kid yourself on that one.
We'll see. We'll do if this podcast still exists in 5 years, we'll replay this clip and see how many had an impact with the Oilers or without the Oilers. And
hey, 2015, every player the Oilers picked has played in the NHL.
Yeah, like geez, look at all those players they really strongly developed, huh? Yeah, it's interesting times with the Edmonton Oilers. And again, with Justin Schultz, I remember, and Ryan, you'll remember this too. It was in a lockout season when they played the 48 games, or strike season? Was it lockout or strike?
There was the half-year lockout.
Yeah. And remember, that's when Edmonton had, I think they had Schultz, they had Eberle, I think they had Hall. And remember, they went down to the AHL.
Oh yeah.
And they just ripped it up. And they gelled together like the stars, the future stars of Edmonton. Really ripped it up in the AHL. And then the season resumed and they did okay. I mean, for a young team.
We were in a playoff spot around around halfway through that season. We were touching the playoff spot and then it fell off.
So is the issue development, or is the issue pressure from the press, from the fans? Because
at that time it was terrible. We were getting all these shiny new toys coming in with the high draft picks. They were shoving them into high pressure roles right out of the beginning. It was a development issue through and through. We needed some veterans to guide these players along.
Yeah. And I mean,
don't forget, Justin was an older rookie, but during that time in the AHL, you're talking about, he got 48 points in 34 games. So they were running and gunning, but his character was his biggest flaw in his career. He thought he was that good, but he was only this good. So, and that's what you've seen it time and time again. Galchenyuk is another example.
Having half the NHL chase you definitely never helped them.
Yeah, but exactly. And you get a big head. Like Galchenyuk never listened to the coaches, listened to his father. There's multitude of examples. Kotkaniemi, same thing. It's like you have to listen to develop. And Justin said, I don't want to be in Anaheim. And then he had a lineup of people, and then his head got, and then AHL. When you go 48 and 34 in pros, your first pro taste, your head gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I just think he's like the anti-Doughty. Doughty's all about character. Pietrangelo is all about character. You don't associate Justin Schultz with a character guy. He's becoming a better vet as he grows older, but earlier in his career, man, he was me, myself, and I, and that's it.
Yeah, and after that 2006 Stanley Cup run, we see the Edmonton Oilers and they're one of their first drafts after that where they just bombed. Other than Sam Gagner, I wouldn't consider that a home run. I mean, he's definitely better than a lot of players they picked after that, but they had 3 picks in the first round in 2007. And it wasn't a very good draft. And after that, they can't seem to draft anyone after the first round. And they've always had fairly low first round picks, but Magnus Pajärvi, Anton Lander, Tyler Pitlick, Martin Marincin, Musial. I mean, Clefbaum, yes, injury problems.
Clefbaum, that's a big hit. Oh, that was a big hit.
Yeah, Yakupov, Moroz, Jujar Kahara, Olivier Roy, Nurse was a good pick, but they just can't seem to have that gem.
Wait till after get to 2017 and up, and there's some notice. Look at 2015. Oh, except for that Zayat guy, he never made the NHL, but everybody there.
Yeah, but making the NHL doesn't mean it's a successful draft, Ryan. You've got to, in your second and third rounds, you've got to have players that are your Adam Henriks, the guys that are longtime players in that second round. Tyler Benson never reached his potential. He was a star in Edmonton.
You got Niemelainen there. He's coming. He'll be here before you know it. Dimitri
Skyler Brindamore. Like, we could do a whole episode just on the Edmonton Oilers draft history because
you can do Montreal too. We sucked as bad, so that's the thing. In every city, everybody thinks their team sucked. Just remember Boston. 3 picks in a row. They could have had Barzal, Connor, the DeBrusque. Let's pretend they keep him. But their other 2 picks were horrible. Shashashin, whatever his name is, and this other guy who started playing Zobro. But Barzal went 15th and Connor went 18th. It's like the Boston folks are saying, oh, my God, we're terrible. And it's the same everywhere, So it's easy because we're involved. We see and we analyze our own team's mistakes. But that's the luck of the draw. Once you get outside the top 10, your chances of making the NHL drops, and the chance of being a star goes under 20%.
That's the thing. These big busts out of Edmonton, the Nail Yakupov, the Puljujarvi, all the other teams in the NHL had them at that position too. If Edmonton wasn't picking there, they were picking those guys.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, Yakupov, I'm not really sure because that's the owner that made that pick, because the professional staff wanted to pick Ryan Murray and they got overridden. And that happened in Montreal also. Trevor Timmins was overridden multiple times when he wanted to pick Chris Kreider, when he wanted to, so It's like it happens, but Yakupov was not the pick from Edmonton for the first pick overall from the staff, the GM, etc. It's the owner that came over the top and said, nope, you're picking the flash and dash. And Yakupov's problem was not effort, because he was the hardest worker on the ice at practice, everything, 28 goals, I think, his first year, etc. But he has no hockey IQ. He doesn't know what to do without the puck. He doesn't know where to go on the ice.
Did you all hear the Brian Burke story of interviewing Yakupov at the draft?
No.
Yakupov spent the whole interview offended that somebody who was picking fourth was interviewing him.
Yeah. See?
So, yeah. So he definitely had an attitude issue.
Yeah. And, he just didn't develop, didn't learn how to play without the puck. And even when he went back to the KHL, he got kicked off his team. This guy sucks. He can't play without the puck. And he even with the puck, he only knows what to do one thing, and that's it. So it's too bad he didn't develop. But, it's like that was easy because Ryan Murray didn't develop, but him, it was due to injury. But Galchenyuk was number 3. He didn't develop for obvious reasons. I don't know what year that was, but, man, was there a good pick that year somewhere in the rounds? Who knows? But, so it is what it is. But everybody has the same attitude. That's the point I want to make, that you guys say, Oilers suck. Yeah, they have a reputation that anybody outside the top 10, they're extremely lucky to get an NHLer out of them,
So you're right, Frank, and that's where the controversy and other leagues and other professional sports, they draft later on when the players are a little bit older. Let's face it, if it wasn't 17, 18-year-olds, if it was 20, 21-year-olds, every draft would be much different. By then, you would have a much better idea of which players are going to, perform. So are we drafting too early? Are we, picking 16, 17, 18-year-old kids before we truly know their potential?
Yeah.
All right.
That's what the draft is about.
Gagne was 17 when he was drafted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, outside of Connor McDavid and Stamkos and John Tavares and, the exceptional players, it is a crapshoot when you're picking these kids. All right, let's move on. Now we are on pick number 11. And in 2008, Chicago Blackhawks, with the 11th pick, picked Kyle Beach. And I don't want to get into the Beach story and the history with the Chicago Blackhawks, but we can all agree that it wasn't a pleasant story and a pleasant situation. And the news reports and things that leaked out, and, unfortunate for Kyle Beach, he never did have a chance to show his hockey side. I think he was a big, young player. He had a lot of potential, a lot of, good years prior to being drafted, and never got a chance to play in the NHL.
50 goals in junior. 50 goals. So.
Yeah. So what could have been with Kyle Beach? So with the number 11 pick overall, I am going to take the second goaltender of this redraft, and that is one Mr. Jacob Markstrom. We're drafted by the Florida Panthers, and then eventually we go and play in Vancouver and now in Calgary. Again, has not won a cup, but a player that, again, based on what's left, he's the best available player, in my opinion. And he did go in the second round. Again, he was a fairly highly touted goalie, had a wonderful junior career, played well in his home country. Career 271, goals against average, 910 save percentage, 184 wins, 166 losses. So regardless of what you think of him now and his playing with the Calgary Flames, and he hasn't won anything, he still has had a tremendous career for a goalie that was passed over in the first round. So yes, Jacob Markstrom. Any opinions, guys, about Jacob?
Yeah, he's the danger of drafting European goalies because he was the it goalie prospect like Spencer Knight is now, etc., like Carter Hart was a couple of years ago. But he had a lot of trouble adapting to the small ice because everybody thinks it's the skaters that have the most trouble because they'll have less space, etc. But the rebounds don't come off the same. It's like all the angles where the players are, they're further away, etc. So it took him a long time to adapt, and but eventually he got the hang of it. But he was a late bloomer. But that most goalies are. It's like only the exceptional ones, like Carey Price, play very young. So he's an example, but he's a number one goalie. So it's, to me, a no-brainer pick at this point.
Was he playing behind Luongo in the first part of his career?
Yep.
Okay.
I got the Corey Schneider treatment. you know?
So best season was 37 wins last year with Calgary, with a .922 save percentage, 2.22 goals against average. So I think definitely a top 15 pick if teams were to redraft. I think a majority of them would have Jacob Markstrom in their top 15. All right, we move on to Frank with the number 12 pick overall. The Buffalo Sabres selected Tyler Myers, a guy that we've kind of talked about a little bit earlier. We brought him up. Frank, what do you think? Is he going to go to you at number 12?
This just shows you the weakness of the draft. I don't even remember who I picked. So who did I pick again? Like
this guy, Frank.
Derek Stepan. There you go. There's not much to choose from right now. So yeah,
Derek Stepan, I hope you're not listening to this. Frank just gave us a Bobby Clark draft moment. So there you go.
No,
remember
look,
back
okay, he's got 500 points. Okay, but in 867 games, he's like Eberle, he had a couple of great seasons, good season. I'm not going to say great, but this is the anti-2003, you pick Stepan and you go, okay, that's the best that I can get at this point. What was his best season? Because he was useful at one point. Yeah, he was always close. He had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years where he was 53 to 57 point. So he can never get over that hump. But at this point, 867 games, still playing. He's got a astronomical total of 9 points this year in 50 games. But, he's got 500 points in the NHL. So he qualifies for a full pension of 600 games. First round, that's what you want. You're not going to get a superstar in a usual draft like we're having right now. So I was hoping you'd be a homer bias like your two other colleagues and Markstrom would fall to me and I'd pick my second goalie. But no, you took a rep before me. So the next 4 picks are going to be fun because like Derek Stepan, come on, man. We're not having as much fun as 2003. That's for sure.
You've taught me too well in fantasy hockey not to get too emotionally attached to hometown players. So I had to go with the Calgary player. And just for you, Frank, just for you, I can't play the audio on this, but this episode, you just gave us that Bobby Clark moment. You remember this moment?
Couldn't say the name. I just couldn't remember the name.
Same with Bobby Clark. He forgot who he was supposed to draft.
But he also couldn't say the name correctly.
Yeah. All right, number 13. Now we're getting into a little bit of uncertainty because no one knows who each other is going to take. So we're going to have to think on the fly here in case our player is drafted. Woo. At number 13, the Los Angeles Kings took Colton Tubert, another highly rated prospect, was a physical defenseman. A lot of teams apparently wanted this guy, and I think eventually he did make his way to Edmonton. He was on Edmonton's list. I know that for
He
2008.
played with us for a season. Not with
Yeah.
us, but around us.
So Colton Tubert went to LA at number 13. And Eric, you are up. Let's show a picture of Colton Tubert here, just in case you're influenced to want to take him again. So what do you think, Eric? Who goes at number 13?
I like defensemen. I like horses a little bit, and I would choose. And he ended up going. If I'm looking at my thing here, he was a round 2, number 53, Travis Hamonic. I liked him when he played for the Flames, and that kind of blows. I found him very difficult for the Oilers to play against. He was one of those guys who was a tough competitor. He's offensive numbers. He doesn't have anything like that. He wasn't that kind of defenseman, but he was tough. And I think that's, for those kind of defensemen, good Manitoba kid. Yeah, I think he fits in that role for me. So, yeah, there you go.
So Hamonic, who drafted by the Islanders, and again, one of these players that wanted to be close to home. I think there was some family issues with his parents or his mother or father, and so he had requested a deal or a trade out of New York to be closer to Western Canada. They accommodated that, and
Don't
he's
hear that
playing
too
again.
often.
No, you don't see that too often. And it was nice of the Islanders to do that. So he played in Calgary, Vancouver, and now in Ottawa, and still going, still playing 56 games so far with Ottawa, 10 points, 59 penalty minutes. Travis Hamonic going number 13. All right, number 14. We're back up to Ryan, and in the real draft, it was Carolina's pick. And Carolina, with this pick, they chose Zach Boychuk. I believe he played his junior hockey in Lethbridge with the Hurricanes. Again, another kind of Nikita Filatov, a small guy, a lot of dash. He's on Twitter all the time. He's a big user of Twitter. What are you going to do, Ryan, with the number 14 pick? Is it going to be?
I figured this pick wasn't going to be a homer pick, but then I looked at where he was from, and I'm going to get lit up for it. But I'm going to go with Jared Spurgeon. 6th round pick, a little bit of a treat picking that far up. Serviceable, 800 and somewhat games. A little bit of offense to his game, not a tremendous amount, but plays well enough to be in the NHL for 12 years and earn a pension, I guess, as Frank would say.
And he's underrated. He was quietly effective defenseman, so no flash, but a guy who did well by positioning. So he's got a high IQ. We had talked about low IQ players before. Well, he's a high IQ defenseman, and kudos to you, because that's probably a better pick than Eberle.
Jesus.
I had to.
But not as good as Justin Schultz?
No, not as good as Justin Schultz.
Close, but definitely better than Eberle. So, yeah. So, no, very solid defenseman and underrated. The people who know him the best are in Minnesota, and they know how effective he is. So
Nice.
it's like Hamonic, it's like no flash, but physical defenseman, right-hand shot. That's very important for Hamonic pick. And Spurgeon, he's top 4. So when you get a top 4 defenseman in the first round, you're not
Six
top 5 picks. Any GM, what? Yeah, I know, but I'm saying in ours, like we're drafting in the first round. So if you tell a GM, like in any upcoming draft, if I can guarantee you a top 4 defenseman, will you take it? and they're picking in the teens, they're going to say, yes, tell me who it is. Give me your crystal ball. And they would jump on it,
Yeah. All right. And then we move to two more picks to go here. And with the number 15 pick, the Ottawa Senators, that's where they did select Erik Karlsson. So again, they got a gem in the draft there at number 15. So because Karlsson is not on the board anymore, I'm going to go with a player that was drafted already in real life, but fell down, and that's Tyler Myers. I think he's probably the best defenseman left of the players still playing. Fairly reliable now as a number 5, number 6 guy. Big. I just remember how tall this kid was when he was drafted. Really big kid. I believe he has dual citizenship because he had the option of playing for Team USA or Team Canada. And I think a player that probably is more suited to kind of be drafted right around this range, maybe a couple picks later, but I would take Tyler Myers. And again, I think most managers, if he was still available, would gladly take a young Tyler Myers. All right, that leads us to Frank and our last pick of the redraft, which belonged to the Boston Bruins, one of Frank's favorite teams, Boston. And they took
Joel
Colborne.
Oh my God! Yeah, the next.
Yes, Joel.
See him,
Joel
I remember
Colborne.
because he was the next Joel Thornton, 6'5". They really thought they had the next coming of Joe Thornton in Boston, but he never amounted to that. So my pick is a player that has had 6 consecutive 20-goal seasons, only interrupted by injury. Included in there is a 30-goal season and a 40-goal season. The midget, the legend, Cam Atkinson. Well, he is a midget. He's
Come on,
5'8".
Eric. Give the slow clap, Eric.
Oh, okay. Atkinson.
Okay, why, Frank? Why Mr. Atkinson?
41 goals. Hello.
In his career or in 1 year?
In 1 year, but he's got 6 consecutive 20-goal seasons. You're in the mid-teens. Like, that's successful as a pick. And he has a 35-goal season, a 41-goal season without injuries. And that's consecutive. He has 7 20-goal seasons. Any GM would say, yeah, give him to me. So I have a redraft thingy here. And he's actually, where is he? He's 11th on this redraft. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And you can see on the
Ahead of
screen here,
Spurgeon.
he's
Go
fourth
ahead.
overall in goals, total goals. 4th.
Yeah.
He's got the 4th most goals. He's actually tied for 3rd with Adam Henrique.
Who's that in second place there?
Steve Stamkos is number 1, and then no one else really important.
Yeah, so I'm glad he fell to me because he was in the 6th round. He was taken right before the aforementioned Spurgeon in the 6th round. So the 6th round was very successful. Yeah, Spurgeon went 156th, and Cam Atkinson went 157th. So Filatov went 5th, and Atkinson went 152 picks later, and he did what Filatov was supposed to do. So think about it. 7 20-goal seasons, a 30, 40-goal season. Like, who wouldn't want that on their team? And if he wasn't injured, it would have been more. So he was consistent, like clockwork, 20, 30 goals, 20 to 30 goals. And he's, again, missing the whole season again because of injuries, but he's 5'8". They called him a midget for a reason. He is. He's small, 5'8". In the NHL, it's rough. He doesn't have the speed of other small players not to get hit, etc. So a lot of wear and tear. So he'll be back next year. What else was I going to pick? That's That's the question. Matt Martin, yeah, I could have picked him for Pims. Borowecki, maybe, but there was this is not TJ Brody, 300 points a D, maybe, but this was not like 2003, we're going crazy for breadcrumbs,
No, I think that's a good pick, Frank. And Frank loves goal scoring because 3 of his 4 picks were in the top 8. They're in the top 8 of total goals scored from that draft class. So
and my other
Atkinson
pick is a goalie, so he can't be on the list.
That's right. Yeah. Atkinson number 4, Stepan number 6, and Carlson number 8. So yeah, good job there, Frank, in taking goal scorers. In terms of assist leaders, Carlson has the most assists, Stamkos, John Carlson. So Eric chose 2 of the top 3 assist getters. Roman Yossi, number 5, Doughty, number 4, Peter Angelo, Josh Bailey, number 7. No one chose Josh Bailey in the redraft. I'm sure he would be coming up soon. If we were to go another round, he would probably get selected. But let's talk about busts and maybe a bust of the first round. Which team really struck out in terms of not wasting a pick? Well, kind of wasting a pick, but the player never really did much in the first round. Eric, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I don't mind. So I was doing some research. So a little bit of Homer stuff coming at you. So Dustin Penner, if you remember that name, and he's well known here because it was a big deal. He was signed as a restricted free agent, caused a whole bunch of problems with Brian Burke and Kevin Lowe at the time. They hated each other after that. They finally came together when Brian Burke's son tragically died, and they kind of eased that over. But that was years. That went on for years. Anyway, my long story is, so the Oilers had to give up their pick, and so if you look at the draft, and you look at Anaheim, I think it was 21st. If I'm wrong, I could be wrong, but I don't have my glasses on. But
17th.
17th. Jake Gardner, am I correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Jake Gardner never played for them. He got traded. He played a lot for the Leafs. He's still playing, I think. But they could have done so much with that. They lost Dustin Penner. Penner did, he had 1 30-goal season, I think, with the Oilers. But generally, he went from 600,000 to 4,250,000 is what the Oilers signed him for. And I think that was a bust. And that's not just Jake Gardner, but it's the whole thing where the Oilers lost that at that particular time. The reason why they got I think they were 20. The reason they got Jordan Eberle is because one Chris Pronger took them to the Stanley Cup Finals. I think they won that year, actually, Anaheim, and that's why the Oilers, they even had a shot of not even getting that. If Anaheim had a crap the bed, if you will, or what have you. So I think that was a bust. The Jake Gardner thing, the whole thing just stinks to me. And it stinks to me because the Oilers messed up. The Dustin Penner thing, I think, was stupid. With eyes looking back now, caused a whole bunch of resentment. The Oilers tried to do that again with Thomas Vakoun a little bit earlier. Yeah, it's a mess. And so maybe it's a homer bust, but it's a homer bust. I think it was a mistake. And Jake Gardner really didn't do much either. So Anaheim didn't really super benefit. But there you go.
Yeah, but there's a second defenseman that didn't sign after his college years. So him, like Justin Schultz, didn't sign. And basically he didn't have a great career either. But
Yeah.
he also had a big head, and thought he was all that, went to Toronto, and he had the opportunity. They needed a number one defenseman. That was pre-Morgan Riley years.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And he dropped the ball.
And it's interesting because as you were mentioning that, Eric, I was kind of looking up and, finding out more of the specifics. And so Edmonton lost their first, second, and third round selections for signing Penner. And then Anaheim traded down with that first pick, and they took Jake Gardner. And then with their second pick, they took Justin Schultz. So not only did not both sign, but both were the same draft that were taken.
Wow.
So third, and both didn't really have stellar careers. Yeah, Schultz won 2 cups. Yeah, okay, we'll give him that. But Gardner,
that's what having Scott Niedermayer as a defenseman does to you. These guys said, I don't have no chance to play in the NHL and be dominant, because Scott was fantastic. He was such. I don't know what year he got picked, but he was such a good defenseman. My God, he could change a game. One of those guys that can change a game by himself. What a skater!
All right, Frank, you're up. Frank, in terms of a bust in the first round, give us your pick.
All right, I'm going to leave the easy choices for you and Ryan. So I'm going to go with Nashville. It's unforgivable usually to pick a goalie in the first round. But when you do pick a goalie 18th, make sure it's Vasilevsky, like Tampa did, because they picked him 18th in his draft year, I believe. Not Chet. I should have been drafted by Montreal. Pickard, because he would have fit in with our draft class with his 0 games played, man. He would have been perfect alumni for us in 2008. So just picking the next guy, Lucas Biza, would have been better. 500 games, and then Michael Del Zotto. It's like, and that's why usually you don't pick a goalie in the first round. And when you do, don't mess up. And Nashville messed up, but also Detroit. If you look at the last pick of the first round, 3 total games in the NHL. And the next pick in the draft was Jacob Markstrom. So it's like, we have Voynov. He's a prick of a human being, but if he would have played longer, he would have had a good career at pick 32. So it's like, so I put a two for one with goalies in the first round, because the best goalies were all picked after, as we saw. So none of don't pick goalies, and unless it's a sure thing.
Yeah, and it's really weird looking at Hockey Reference and there's no stats. There's like nothing for him. And just so you're aware, is Chet Pickard in the Hockey Hall of Fame? No, he has not been elected into the Hockey Hall of Fame.
And
how many cups has he won?
His brother, who's better than him, you can look him up. At least he played a few games in the NHL, but these were junior superstars that they never translated their talents to the NHL, and his brother either. So both of them are basically bust, but he's a major one. So
yeah. And when we look at, the goalies that play in the World Juniors, very few of them go on to NHL careers. I can think of Team Canada. Who is that goalie drafted by Montreal that played so well in the World Juniors? Zach
Fucale,
right? Fucale, who was, a really good junior league
but at
goalie.
least he was a second round pick, not a first round.
Yeah.
Second round, the chances of being an NHLer is under 20%. So you're rolling the dice. So at least it's second round. But first round draft capital on a goalie, like Carey Price going 5th overall in 2005, people were going nuts. It's like, are they smoking crack? McGuire, whatever, he lost his mind on the TV on TSN. Well, he always loses his mind, but like Kopitar was still on the board, but he was an exceptional talent. So you have to be sure because it's dangerous. Drafting goalies is like grabbing a hot potato directly from the oven without mitts, barehanded. That's what you do when you draft goalies in the first round. You can't afford to make that mistake. You cannot.
And then maybe there's the fear of missing out because Brodeur, Vasilevsky, as you mentioned, Fleury, a lot of these first round goalies did pan out. So maybe it's just that fear.
There's more great goalies from later rounds. Sorokin, not a first rounder. Sherstickin, not a first rounder. Demko, not a first rounder. Saros, not a first rounder. Pecorini was not a first rounder. It's like you better make sure. So yes, you have the Fleury, but eventually we can see. Okay, was Fleury the best goalie in his draft class? Was X, so the best goalie in his draft class, and it's what you could have gotten instead of. So, and like Chet Picard, I have two guys that they didn't have great careers, but Del Zotto and Spiza at least played 500 and 700 games,
Yeah. And you were talking about Carey Price going number 5 overall to Montreal. You know which other goalie went in the first round that year?
No.
Taken by Toronto?
Oh, the guy who played for Boston.
Tuukka Rask.
Tuukka Rask. Yeah.
What an awesome pick, man. Like, really?
Yeah. No, and we gave him up for the
Rookie of the Year, Raycroft.
Andrew Raycroft.
Andrew Raycroft.
Yeah. Rookie of the Year. Remember, he was Rookie of the Year. Raycroft was.
Yeah.
And then in the second round, the goalies that went Tyler Plant didn't do anything. Jeff Parise went to New Jersey at 38. Andre Pavelek, who
at least he played.
He played, yeah. And then later in the second round, Pierre-Olivier Pelchier. So second round was horrible in terms of goalies. Third round, Christopher Westblom. Jonathan Quick went in the third round.
There you go. Probably he was probably a third best goalie in that draft class. So.
Yeah.
Ben Bishop went round 3.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Yeah.
Ben Bishop. So goalies, you're rolling the dice. You don't know what you're going to get. Alex Stalock went in round 4, and then Alexander Vincent went right after him. So, yeah, it's tough to evaluate the goalies. All right, Ryan, your surprise or your disappointing pick, your bust of round 1.
Well, the team definitely never busted as a whole in round 1, but they could have been they could have been better. The LA Kings at the 13th overall, taking Colton Tubert, had a pretty good WHL career, got drafted, played in the World Hockey, won the 2 under 18 World Hockey Championships again, or under 20, I guess I should say. And found his way to the Edmonton farm system and just couldn't quite get to the NHL. Bigger guy. I don't know really too much of what was going on around there, but definitely had the tools to potentially be an NHL guy, but couldn't put it together and ended up in the wrong farm system, as we discussed earlier at the time in Edmonton. Just couldn't.
I don't think it would have helped. It's like Dylan McIlcrat, whatever. It's his foot speed was lacking, unfortunately, and big guys, there's speed and there's quickness, and big guys that don't have speed, you have to have quickness. Like Chris Pronger had quickness, but Tubert never developed quickness, so you can't hit what you can't catch up.
Yeah. All right, and my disappointment in round one would have to be probably Jordan Eberle.
Oh, Jesus.
That'll be edited.
No.
That'll be edited out because yeah, that's fatherly.
No, it would have to be
teasing.
Justin Schultz. Have to be no. We
Oh,
can't.
Jesus.
We can't do Justin Schultz. No, seriously though, I think the biggest disappointment when you're drafting that high, when you're drafting in the top 10, you've gotta at least hit a triple. Maybe not a home run, but a triple. And Columbus, I think, struck out with Nikita Filatov. They gambled on this Russian player, always a little bit iffy, on the players that play in Europe. And it didn't work out for them. 53 games played in his career, 14 points. Total time on ice was 10 minutes, a shift that he was playing. Not what you would expect out of a 6th pick overall. So, yes, there were other players in round one that didn't play a game. Chet Picard was one with obviously Chicago, Kyle Beach. Anton Gustafsson was chosen by Washington 21st. And 29th, Atlanta took Dalton Levaille, who didn't play a game. So, yes, there were players worse than Filatov, but number 6, come on. You gotta hit a triple there. So that is the player that I think was the biggest disappointment. All right, a couple more questions, guys, before we end off the episode. Surprise or maybe best pick in the later rounds. Now, Frank, you mentioned a few players that we didn't draft that were better and picked later. I'm going to go first. I'm going to get mine out of the way, and I'm going to go with a guy that is a grinder. He plays hard. Every shift that I've seen him play, he plays really hard, and I believe he's closing in on 1,000 games, closing in on 900 games, and that's Matt Martin. A guy I'd like to have on my team, still playing kind of a 4th liner now, but it gets in your face. Over 1,000 penalty minutes, and was a late round pick, I believe. Let me check here.
Yeah, round 5, end of the round, pick 148.
So there you go. Yeah, pick 148. So my pick is Matt Martin. Ryan, over to you. Which player late in the rounds?
He's my last pick in the draft. I'm just trying to find him on my list here again. But it's Spurgeon, 6th round. Why can't I find him now? He disappeared on me. But yeah, 6th round player, solid defenseman, puts up some points, can shut you down, smart guy. You get nearly 1,000 games out of a defenseman in the 6th round, and you've done well.
Yep.
Okay. And Frank.
Obviously, I'm going to go with my last pick also. I got you guys delivered me Cam Atkinson, which went right after Spurgeon. So obviously that's a gem for Columbus. It made up for their Filatov blunder. And Filatov, you might say, oh, it's because he's Russian. If you look at his numbers in the KHL, they suck also. So he was a bust even over there. Like 21 points in 47 games. It's like, so he was like all around bad. So I second your bus choice. So obviously
Yakupov 2.0. Him and Yakupov are from the same cloth.
Yeah. So I have to pick Atkinson. I picked him in the top 16. So in the redraft. So and for a 6th round pick, you dream about that. Brendan Gallagher is the same way. A lot of 20 goals season, 130 goals season. He was a 5th rounder. It's like the chances of making the NHL at that point is like 1, 2, 3, or 4%. So to hit, you just want to hit somebody that plays regularly. So That's my pick.
All right. And Eric, you get the last say here in terms of a player chosen later in the draft that was an impressive pick.
Well, first off, I want to compliment Frank on this Cam Atkinson, who the hell is he? Until I started looking at his stats, and it's like, man, I don't know. Wow. And you know what? I blame it on Columbus. I think it's because they don't really do much. They're not a real playoff team by any stretch of the imagination. And wow, those are really impressive. So good catch on that one. For me, just Gustav Nyquist. He was Gustav was the last pick of the fourth round, number 121. And of course, played for the Red Wings for a number of years. Now is with Columbus. Pretty consistent. He's had some injuries as well, but he's in that 15 plus goal scoring. And anytime I see that, I think that's pretty good for a later round kind of guy. And it's a name that's familiar to me. I've heard it, unlike Cam Atkinson, which is sad. But so that's probably would be kind of a one that I think is a nice surprise that late.
Yeah, number 12 overall in terms of points scored by that draft class. So Atkinson's number 11 overall.
Yeah, that's a very good pick. And just to pile on Ryan, his points per game, Nyquist.
Oh, frick, here we go.
Is 0.6 per game. And the great, masterful Jordan Eberle from round one is at 0.70.
Are you really making an impact if you're not playing?
So, and Nyquist in the fourth round, he got his pension also, 700 games, even with his injury. So,
Right.
fourth round, you tell any GM, the last player you pick in round 4 will play 700 games in the NHL and have over 400 points. Like, would you consider that a successful pick? Everybody's going to say, fourth round? Yeah. So we have to put things in perspective.
That's right.
There's a chart of chances of making the NHL per pick and then chances of being a star, and when you hit the second round, you're at like 20s and under 20 for just making the NHL. The chances of being a star is under 5%, but in the fourth round, it's almost zero. You get the odd superstar, same thing in the sixth round, etc. You have the urban legends, Datsuk and Zetterberg in Detroit, which was 9th round and probably even later for, depends when you had multiple rounds back then. That's the urban legends. Like, that's walking on the beach and finding a 50-carat diamond, stubbing your toe.
So there we go. We got Nyquist, we got Spurgeon, we've got Atkinson, and we have Matt Martin as our 4 later round picks that were good choices by the team. And then the last thing I want to talk about is drafts are always fun to watch because that's where we see trades. That's where we see teams moving players for picks. Do you remember, does anyone on the panel remember any trades from the 2008 draft that stand out for them? And just whoever wants to answer, if you remember any of the trades.
No, I was too young.
Yeah. Well, let me bring up a couple because Frank should remember one of these, and it involved the Montreal Canadiens.
What did we do again?
The Montreal Canadiens trading their first round pick and their second round pick for Alex Tanguay. And, I have to give Montreal credit because that ended up being a pretty good move for them because Calgary, with Montreal's pick, ended up taking, let me see here. Calgary took, is that the right year? Yeah. Calgary took Greg Nemitz. He played
What a waste.
15 games in the NHL.
They could have taken out Eberle.
And Alex Tanguay, of course.
Went a little bit. Okay, so now I remember. That's why I kept saying, like, Trevor Timmins wanted to pick John Carlson with his pick. And then I go, how come? Why? What's this crap? It's like they didn't have a pick. But now it makes sense because there were 2 picks ahead of Washington for John Carlson. And when the GM did that, like Tara Timmons says, okay, boss. But he was set and excited to pick John Carlson. And imagine the Habs with Carlson, with Chris Kreider. It's like, no, let's go get the local boy. Great idea, man. So, but like, okay, that's why I had that. I kept telling you guys in the past that, oh, Carlson was the pick for, but that's why now. So Calgary should have included with the trade, should have asked what was the Trevor Timmons first pick for part of the trade, because Greg Nemitz, big guy, man, power forward. I remember him. He was supposed to have all the tools, 6'3", 200 speed, but like didn't do nothing even in the HL. As soon as he turned pro, some people, and that's why you have like goalies are hard to predict, but power forwards also, because they dominate in juniors because of their size. They can push around, especially when they're 18, 19, 20, overagers. They push around the smaller players that are 16, 17 in the OHL, WHL, and Quebec juniors. When you get to play pro in the AHL, you're playing against men, a 30-year-old, 32-year-old. He went from, 70 points in 51 games, 77 points in 65 games, to 33 and 68, 29 and 51, 10 and 55, 9 and 32, and 11 and 14. Oh, that's the same year. So that's 20 and 46, and then 14 and 21, and then retirement, So it's like, it's hard because you have to really, scouts have to analyze, is this person dominating because he's Eric Lindros, or is he dominating just because he's bigger and he just pushes people around and gets his points that way? And that's hard to do. And obviously Calgary had it on the wrong side of the coin with Greg Nemitz. But I remember Nemitz, man. He was like the next power forward that everybody looks for, like the Lucic of the world, guys that can, the Proberts, the guys that can score and be tough. Everybody always looks for them. Montreal, Michael McCarron was supposed to be the next one also. Never panned out.
Yeah, Cody Hodgson. Yeah, I mean,
Cody Hodgson wasn't that big. He was just a good two-way player, grit, but not big and tough. He was not 6'3", 6'4". McCarron was 6'5", 240, but never panned out.
With the second pick that Calgary got from Montreal, they chose Mitch Wall with the second pick. So again, another.
No, their second pick was 2009.
What was it, 2009?
Yeah.
Okay. Right, my mistake, 2009. So it was not Mitch Wall. Good thing. All right, the other trades made in that draft, Olli Jokinen. Remember him? Olli Jokinen was traded by Florida to the Phoenix Coyotes at the time, and the Florida Panthers got Keith Ballard, Nick Boynton, and a second-round pick in 2008. And I guess we can check in on them, who they got with that pick in the second round. Florida looks like they would have chosen Colby Roback. Colby Roback, not familiar with that player. So kind of a miss by them. Also, Chris Mason was traded to St. Louis during that draft for a fourth-round pick. Steve Eminger went to the Flyers for a first-round pick. So Eminger and a third going to Philadelphia, and Washington got a first-round pick. Now, I don't know if that's the John Carlson pick.
Depends if they have two.
They do. Anton Gustafsson and John Carlson. So
it's probably Gustafsson.
One of those picks.
Yeah.
If it was the John Carlson pick, that was a great trade by Washington. Maybe they saw him on the board, and so they made the deal. And other than Tanguay, RJ Umberger, you might remember him. Mm-hmm. He went to Columbus for a first-round pick that went to the Flyers. So the Flyers got a first-rounder for Umberger and a 4th rounder. And the Flyers, who would they have taken then? Luca Spiza. Yeah. So they would have got Spiza for RJ. So, yeah, it's always fun when trades take place. Day 2 was mainly picks for picks, like always happens on day 2. Brad Richardson was traded for a 2nd rounder, and Alex Barrett traded for a 3rd rounder. So, yeah, those were the trades that were made during both of the draft days. So as we end off here, guys, we'll start with Eric. Anything else in your closing statement?
No, I think, I think what Frank said about each draft has to be taken, it can't be really compared to the other one. And certainly the 2003 is really strong in my head, just from a superior perspective. But yeah, there's certainly some beauties here as well that happened. You look back and think, wow, there were some really, some great picks as well. So yeah, 2008 wasn't as terrible as, when I first went into it. I was like, well, sure, the first 2 picks were sexy and good and are still well known, but after that it's like But no, there was some, once you start kind of doing some analyzing, that was good. And yeah, that would be my thoughts. That yeah, this wasn't a terrible draft, actually, as it turned out. The Jordan Eberle going so high, I'm not so sure of, but otherwise, I think there you go. So,
all right,
Ryan's had a heck of a day, I think.
Yeah, it was pick on Ryan on the panel today.
It really was,
it's all in good fun. It's all in good fun. I'm an huge Oiler fan. Eric's a huge Oiler fan. Frank is
not
Frank. And Ryan, anything to close off with?
I would have taken Eberle first overall if it wasn't for the meeting that was going to happen. No, I don't. I mean, kind of hard to look back when you weren't really as involved as what I would be now. I mean, now whenever I'm watching the draft, I almost feel like taking a day off work. I'll set up the iPad, look at Twitter and all this and that, and get the live updates of everything that's happening and watch the draft too. And back in 2008, I definitely was not doing that. So it was interesting looking back, and kind of gravitated towards the hometown bias, as Frank would like to say, but that's because that's the players I knew. There's the play right there.
There you go. This one's for Ryan, for all the teasing that we did. First goal by Jordan Eberle.
Got a signed poster from him at that too when he's coming out with the hat. Very beautiful picture.
On Mika Kiprasov.
First goal, first game, first star.
There you go. That one's for you, Ryan. We won't show all the Jordan Eberle bloopers. All right, Frank, what do you got to leave us off with here?
So I did research to get your answer. So the Philadelphia trade for Washington was John Carlson.
Ooh.
And the pick, Gustafsson, whatever his name is, he was not the Washington's pick. They got that one from New Jersey, and their pick was traded eventually to Minnesota that took Tyler Kuma. So, yeah, interesting. So they whiffed on the New Jersey trade maybe before the draft day, whatever. But, yeah, John Carlson is Philadelphia to Washington.
And that was for, who is that for? Which player did they get?
I don't know. You put that up. It wasn't a good player.
Steve Eminger.
Yeah, Steve Eminger, a defenseman too.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good deal for Washington. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Detroit won the cup that year. So, Atlanta Trashers got Pittsburgh's pick with the Dalton Levy you spoke of earlier. So this is crazy. So it's fun.
Yeah.
I'll send you it's records at NHL.com, and you actually see there's one pick that went through 4 teams before it went to Phoenix, like the Victor Tikhonov went from Dallas to the Kings to Anaheim to Phoenix. So you see all that in the column. So it's pretty cool.
And I'd be remiss if we didn't end off with Frank allowed to boast a little bit about the 2008 draft from the Montreal Canadiens perspective. So look at those gems. Frank kind of talked about a little bit at the end of last episode. You might want to go check that out.
Jason Messian was like a jumbo goalie that was unfortunately Swiss cheese. So Danny Cristo was an NCAA gamble who had the brains to freeze off his toe during a snowstorm. He decided to walk from a party. He was probably drunk, wearing almost nothing. And he played for Minnesota Duluth or Minnesota, whatever. It's like Canadian winters, man, you know? So he froze his toe off. So right when that happened, I said, okay, this guy probably doesn't have the brain power to make the NHL. So,
And how many games total did the entire Montreal draft prospects from 2008 play, Frank?
Same as me, man. Same as me.
Zero. All right.
And this is where you see where Montreal didn't win a cup with Carey Price. You know, people like to, dump on Price. Well, he never won the cup like other goalies have. But he was picked in 2005. And then 2008, you've seen the result. But if you go a little bit before, a little bit after, the drafting, man, it was horrible. And we had momentum because right before 2008, we had Carey Price, Max Pacioretty, PK Subban in round 2. You know, we were picking, we were humming, but then it all fell apart. And it's like, if you don't have good draft picks, Edmonton knows this. You can't just have number 1 picks and build a team. You have to pick NHL players in later rounds that fill up your roster. And we couldn't do that. And that's a major reason why Montreal sucked. It's like it's unforgivable. And I don't care if you don't have a first-round pick. We'll see what history says about Carolina last year. They didn't have a first-round pick. Every time they pick somebody, wow, what a great value they had. Wow, what a great value they had. You know, and it's like every single pick all the way to round 4. Ooh, potential NHLer there. It's like you have to at least pick one. You know, Spurgeon and Cam Atkinson went one after the other in round 6. You know, like 0, it's unforgivable. And and that's like we did grades last time. We didn't. I would have given them a Z or a Z. British US saying ZZ because it equals 0. Z for 0 games. You know?
And that's what I get for letting Frank speak about the 2008 Montreal draft. And
what a disaster.
Not like Boston. Boston has great second-round picks usually. Same with Detroit. They have a history of late-round picks. But Edmonton
was a great second-round pick. It's just not.
Yeah.
So anybody out there, if you're following a team and you get pissed off about their draft, come back to 2008, and there's probably other examples for other teams, but 0 games in the NHL, it's like disastrous. You cannot develop players fast enough to compensate. And look at before and after. It was like Chris Kreider was in that period. We went with the local kid. It's like it was disaster after disaster, and it was not Trevor Timmins. He was overruled. He was told to take Louis LeBlanc, just like Edmonton was told to take Yakupov by the owner. It's like it's not the staff's mistakes,
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to have to end it there. It's been a fairly long episode, but really enjoyed it picking through the 2008 draft. And I know we've been giving Ryan a hard time. And if we're on much longer, someone else is going to be giving Ryan a hard time too. It's getting late, and we have to prepare for next week's trade deadline show. So be ready for that panel. Thank you guys for watching. This is Life in Alberta. Go check out the other videos. Go check out the previous podcasts with Frank and Eric and Ryan. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next episode.
See you next episode.
All right, cut. Hang on for a few minutes as we wait for your data to finish downloading here. Frank,
well, let's just look
at swear words tonight.
What?
Where's all the swear words tonight? Are you feeling a little down or something?
I only swore after we finished last time, now. I didn't swear during, it's after. So
Did that shock you when I included that in there last episode?
yeah, I noticed right away. You know?
Oh, did you?
I go, I can't believe he left a swear word in there. He even bleeped it with a Batman visual, you know? So, but you know what would be nice? Just to contrast the two drafts, have the 4 players we picked last time and put them side by side. You know, you can put that at the end of the video, just a visual of the 4